In this video, I'm updating the lander program I've been writing in dflat, just adding a few elements to make the gameplay a bit more fun and challenging, and also a couple of optimizations which I'll explain, moving from scaled to fixed point integers, and a tiny bit of polish, although I would not say that this is trying to be a finished game. It's really more just to add to a little bit more of an atmosphere. So let's just quickly look at the source code. What have I done? The main thing around the performance is to improve the way that scaled integers are being handled. So previously the x and y coordinate was multiplied by 100 to allow a 0 to 99 fractional part. Now what I've decided to do is scale the x and y by shift lefting 6 times, so essentially multiplying by 64, but by using shift rather than a multiply operation, and that gives me a 0 to 63 fractional resolution, which is good enough for what I want. And then when I'm converting then from what is now a fixed point binary representation to integers, I only need to shift right by 6 bits, and that's what XX and YY is created from by dividing, or by essentially dividing by 64, but by using shifts. And in some basic tests that I've done, I can see that even in D flat, dividing by 64 versus shifting right by 6 bits is actually about a third slower, right? So shifting by 6 bits is significantly quicker. So that's a small optimization. So in terms of improvements, one thing I've added is a fuel counter, which means that the player has to be aware of how much fuel they're using, and if the fuel is more than 0 is only when you have the ability to change your ship's direction by thrusting. When you thrust upwards, your fuel is reduced by 2, and left and right, your fuel is reduced by 1, because those rockets don't have as strong an effect, and the fuel is then remaining is then printed out whenever you use some of it. So that adds to the challenge, because you have to be careful about how much you're using your rockets. And the other thing that I've done is that when you are actually thrusting the rocket, there's a small graphical change just to embellish and give the effect of a rocket motor firing. You'll see the effect. It's not great. I'm no graphic artist, but it's still better than just having a static image, which is the same regardless of which way you're traveling or whether there's any rockets firing or not. And then finally, what I've added is when you die, if you die, there's a do crash routine, and all that does is plays a sound and does a little animation, which I'll show you. So let's see if we can get this working. I will make sure that the tap file is created. Please look at the previous video if you need to know what I'm on about here. Now let's load in dflat the tap file, and now it's quite a bit longer because I've got so much more graphics going on here, so it takes longer. I'll press F6 to speed it up. It's done, and now if I start, you'll see the difference. So firstly, see the graphic changes when I'm thrusting, and also the fuel's going down, so I now have to be careful about how much fuel I'm using. And you can see the slightly raised part of the platform right on the extreme edge there at the bottom, and what I want to do is, or maybe I need to go over this way and try and land safely. I've landed safely, but what happens if I don't land safely? You explode. So that's what I've done. Hopefully that makes a bit of sense. Now I could do a few more improvements from here. What could I do? Well, if I go back to the code here, you can see that the spaceship is a bit flickery, And the reason for that is that when the spaceship is changing position or changing its graphic, first this plot here on line 82 erases the ship from the screen, and then there is a check. If you remember from the previous videos, there is a check to see whether there's anything in the background that it has been collided with, and then the spaceship is plotted back in the new position or in the new graphic. So this is the reason for the flicker. First I erase the ship here, then I do something, and then I plot the spaceship here, and that delay means that there will be a flicker. Can I minimize that delay? Not that easily in BASIC, but of course I could add some assembly here. I could call out to an assembly routine that could maybe do this. Maybe I could also speed up the handling of the calculations to change your velocity and your position. So these are things I might try, and especially maybe here it might be worth calling a machine code routine and using the inline assembler of dflat as an example of how that can be done. So perhaps that will be the next video, but hopefully you saw that again with quite a small program. You know, even with all these lines of just data definitions, it's less than 200 lines long, and in fact the main program is only about 100 lines long, and the main loop is literally line 55 to 97, so 42 lines. You know, you can have a decent enough game running in quite a few number of lines. So thank you for watching my video.